Out with Adewale Adeoye and Babajide Kolade Otitoju. Now let's get back to the conversation, shall we? The governor of Borno State, Professor Babagana Zulum, is not new to disasters, but the devastation caused by last week's flood in Maiduguri is giving him sleepless nights. Professor Zulum is worried that some Boko Haram leaders serving jail terms might have escaped from the correctional center in Maiduguri following the flood disaster. But as the search and rescue team continues its operations, more people have been rescued and evacuated to safer places, while new IDP camps have recorded a high influx of victims. Development partners are complementing efforts of the government to provide succor for affected residents. A delegation from the United Nations, led by the UN Assistant Secretary General and Humanitarian Resident Coordinator Mohammed Malik, said measures are being put in place to scale up interventions towards bringing succor to victims of the disaster. Now let's share the story by TVC News' Jesse Tafida with you.
A high-part delegation of humanitarian organizations arrived at Governor Zulum's council chambers. The team was led by the United Nations Assistant Secretary General, Humanitarian Resident Coordinator Mohammed Malik IV. They are here to commiserate with the state government over the flood disasters. According to him, the humanitarian crisis caused by the flood is huge and needs the support of all development partners to cushion the impact of the floods on people in the state.
And I don't want this meeting to be a list of WHO, UNDP, OICHA, all UN families doing. But I just want you to tell you that we will not spare any of our resources in this response. Probably we might not be where we wanted to be in terms of resources. But as we speak, we will try also to repurpose resources that were designed for some other intervention to see how we can bring them towards scaling up and speeding up this response.
Governor Babagana Zulum appreciates the concerns shown by development partners at this crucial time.
What we need is that we shall work with you more closely to prevent outbreaks of diseases, provide immediate medical assistance, provide immediate humanitarian support in terms of food and non-food items, shelter, amongst others. But most importantly, the major interventions that we need is how we shall support these people to go back to their houses.
Part of the delegation are representatives from various humanitarian organizations, including the European Union, all UN agencies, Save the Children, the World Food Programme, and Intersource. Jesse Tafida, TVC News, Maiduguri.
Our heart goes out to the Borno State government and the people there, mostly the women and children and people living with disabilities. But BKO, the governor, showing concerns, about escaped prisoners. But if after how many days, we still don't know the number of people, the number of inmates that escaped. BKO, how worrisome is this?
It's always something usually happens in Nigeria. When this sort of thing happens, the authorities will first try to give us a feeling that the problem is not as bad as it is, so that people are not thrown into unnecessary panic. What the governor has said is different to what I've heard some of the Ministry of Interior officials say, giving us the impression that not many people escaped. We have relocated them to another prison, which is on a higher ground.
Okay.
But Governor Zulum is not someone who masks his concerns. If he's concerned about something, he will talk about it. And you can see he's worried that many of the Boko Haram leaders who had been in detention have escaped in this calamity. And you can't say a governor does not know what he's saying, because security operatives will also be briefing him from time to time. Officer? Yes, they'll be briefing him about the extent of the problem. And he's saying, look, this is a big problem that a lot of the Boko Haram leaders in detention in Maiduguri may have escaped. And by that, he meant some of the people who had been in detention since like 2013, 2014. You know? They had been in prison. And not many of them have been convicted. Because we have hundreds of these terrorists that we've not even put on trial.
On a waiting
You're just
trial.
keeping them in prison, you know, keeping them in correctional facility, because I'm an old-fashioned person. It's prison that keeps coming to my mouth. And these are people, dangerous people, bomb makers, commanders, leaders of the group from the two factions of Boko Haram, ISWAP and the Shekau-led faction, which is actually called Boko Haram. A good number of those guys were in prison. And when the prison wall came down, what do you expect?
Some might have even died.
Some would naturally, for somebody, for example, who has almost finished serving a sentence, if there is a jailbreak, he will be reluctant to escape. Because trying to escape itself is a big crime for which you get shot down. The first thing to do when a prisoner tries to escape is to gun him down. That is the tradition. So a prisoner who has almost finished serving a sentence would rather wait to be rearrested, you know, and put back in the facility. And with the floods overtaking the prison, a lot of people who fled were justified to flee. Because you could just die in the deluge. So the governor is worried. You know, a lot of us are underrating the scale of this disaster. More than 400,000 people have been displaced from their homes. The zoo. I was watching a foreign TV station. I think an Indian thing showing the ostrich that escaped from the prison and the lion that escaped, and people were running. Even the person who filmed the lion was too scared. He couldn't keep the shot steady.
Sure.
You know what it means. You know, you are looking at the lion eyeball to eyeball. How can you feel comfortable?
Exactly, you can't.
So a lot of the animals have left their enclosures because of what happened. This is a big global level disaster. People should stop seeing it simply as a Nigerian class, if I can use class in inverted commas. This is a disaster of international proportion. And Nigeria must get the support of the international community, because a lot of these houses, even after the water has receded,
the
integrity of those houses, you can't vouch for.
Sure.
So people would not just need to be resettled. New homes must be built for people. And this will cost a lot of money. It's not, Nigerians should not think that, people like Dangote have come up, they brought a few billions. No, the scale of this disaster is bigger than that.
It's almost like rebuilding a whole city.
It's bigger than that. Cemeteries overrun, corpses floating on the water. People can't even find drinking water. I saw people trapped in a story building. Soldiers were throwing bread at them. We are throwing, some of the bread will fall inside the water. Now, in terms of sanitation, water already contaminated by the fact that cemeteries have been overrun and corpses are flowing, especially the Muslim cemetery in Gwonge. You know the way the Christians bury their dead? Yes, and we put concrete here and there, the place is sealed. That's not the way the Muslims bury their dead. So the cemetery in Gwonge area was overrun and corpses floating on some cases bones, same bones. So the water is contaminated already. The possibility of disease is huge. So we need an international scale intervention. After all, Nigeria is a party to all of these international funding agencies and all that under the umbrella of the UN. Nigeria is a party to all of this. So at this time, they need to help us. They need to come to our aid. Hospitals, you know, they were talking. There's a boy who is close to me who said he had just been discharged when this disaster happened. And the hospital is already submerged. Laboratories.
Yes.
You know, hospitals. So I really feel for the governor of Borno State now because he needs all the help that he can. He needs all the help
that he can. But let's still stay with the issue of our correctional centers. Well, what is the state of our correctional centers in emergencies like this?
I think when you are confronted with a natural disaster like this, given the capacity of Nigeria and our institutions, you know, we don't have preventive measures that can stop maybe hardened criminals from escaping from our correctional centers. Even when there are no natural disasters, these correctional centers are vulnerable. People go there, they set the place ablaze. We have seen so many prison outbreaks, even in normal times. Not to talk of when there's a disaster of this magnitude. So the truth of the matter is that we don't have preventive measures. Those correctional centers cannot even withstand very serious flooding situation or very serious wild wind. If you ever visited those places, they are not built to withstand, you know, natural disaster like this. And apart from that, when people escape from correctional centers, we don't have the mechanism to track them because of our data, poor data, you know, poor networking, you know, the DNAs and all that. And also, you know, in other places that if a prisoner escapes, immediately it goes somewhere, maybe to a bank, and touches something. You know, there's an alert. The government already knows, security knows where he is.
They will leave digital
and they know how to, within 24 hours. Even if this had happened in other countries, they will have the list of all the victims that we are talking about who have either died or are missing. But in our station now, we are talking about some figures, 256 in 22. So we don't have their names. I'm sure a lot of people are missing as we are talking, that probably nobody will be able to account for them. And the fact of the matter is that even when we have warning signals, our emergency responses are always very poor. If you look at the forecast, you know, about this flooding, it's been on right from January. We have been giving warning locally and internationally. And this is not the first time we have had flooding. This is the worst we have had in Maiduguri. Yes. It happened in 1992. It happened in 1994. It happened in 2012, though not of this magnitude. That dam we are talking about was built between 1984 and 1986. So many years ago, it collapsed. You know, so you can, it has a capacity that, you know, the volume of water received was quite above the capacity of the dam. what kind of renovation have we done since 1984 to ensure that the dam will be able to withstand
pressures
test of
like
time.
this.
And over time, in fact, as far back as 1970, we have been warned about deforestation going on in the north. In fact, the northeast is one of the most hit. In 20 years, the northeast lost about 70%, about 7% of its forest. Northwest, the same thing. North central, the same thing. What are we doing to bring back what we have lost? The biodiversity, the impact on soil erosion, the impact on agriculture. Borno State is noted for sorghum, millet, sweet tomatoes, cowpea, and all sorts of products. What will be the impact of this flooding on those farmers? People have lost fortunes. And the problem is that it can happen again. So we are dealing with a crisis of climate change, and we are not putting the right mechanism to get in place to deal with this problem. Look at Lagos State, for instance. The last time I remember massive planting of trees was during the time of Fashola. Real massive planting of trees. How many states are planting trees all over the country? Very few of them, if any. So we need to be futuristic. That what will happen to Nigeria in the next 20, 30 years. It will involve a lot of planning. The urban and regional laws, the laws on the environment, the laws on climate change needs to be domesticated so that we can have a kind of system that can deal with future problems, because this thing can happen again, as we are talking about, maybe the next few years. You don't put the right mechanism in place.
In other words, we've been taking nature for granted.
Yeah. And nature is fighting back. We have been so unfair to nature.
All right, Biko, on a final note, this is not the first time we're seeing this, okay? Early this year, the wall of one prison, actually fell and prisoners escaped. What will you be telling the Minister of Interior on ways to improve our custodial centers across the country?
You need to build new prisons. I know that it's not easy, but you need to build new prisons. Some of those prisons were built more than 100 years ago. We need to build new prisons because, look, if we had modern prisons, we probably would have been able to escape. We probably would have been in a position to avoid the kind of situation that we found ourselves. There are not many modern prisons in our country. I always talk about the governor of
Akpabio.
Yes, because he built a modern prison. We need to build those modern prisons. I think what's his name? Kurocha also built a modern prison, detention facility. So we need to build them, and we need to relocate them far away from city centers where we have them, so that when there's a jailbreak, it's not easy for them to dissolve into the crowd. So because that was what worsened the problem in Suleja. When you have prisons located like 10 meters away from people's residences, it's dangerous, because once a prisoner escapes, you can run into, you can go and hide in one of the houses close to the prison, and security forces will find it difficult to deal with the situation. So we need to relocate them. Also improve prisoners' welfare as well. So there is a lot that the Interior Minister needs to do.
All right, let's move straight to our next topic. As Nigeria continues to grapple with the aftermath of devastating flood in Maiduguri, Borno